And welcome to episode 2 of the Bodhi
The
Bros.
Bodhi Brothers. I am Ray. Namaste.
And I am John with a J, and we'll just leave it that way. What a pleasant surprise with the singing bowl. You got me there. My mouth was open.
You gotta clear out those negative vibes from the very beginning, you know. So
well done,
welcome
sir.
to Bodhi Brothers. So you explain what we do.
You want me to do that? That's fine.
Explain what we do.
We do. I think we're figuring out.
What figuring out actually.
Yeah, I don't know. This is episode 2, man. We're figuring out with each other and with our audience that is quickly. Let's talk about this real quick. Quickly building. In a week's time, we've managed to build a Facebook page community of over 150 likers. So thank you for that. Supreme gratitude to all of you for taking the time to click the button and to follow what we're doing and see what we're all about. Also on Instagram, creeping up to 100 followers. I don't even know how that happened so rapidly, but thank you. Maybe we're doing something that's going to make sense, and we're pulling the forces of the universe to make it just attractive to all of you in a way. You're like, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but let's follow this shit. So we appreciate that. We have 0 YouTube subscribers, but that's okay because
it's all good.
Yeah, we haven't sent out any invitations really. We actually did a lot in a short period of time. We're on Anchor. We are on Spotify. We are on Radio Public. We are on Google Podcasts. And I think, is there one more? Yeah, Breaker. That's the 5th one. It's soon to be, nice. It takes, thank you. This is something that I didn't think I was going to be able to accomplish, but Anchor really did most of the work. It just kind of figured out how to toy with the site. But that's really exciting for me, man. Wow. Yeah. I didn't think we're going to be able to be available on so many platforms, streaming so quickly with such ease.
Worldwide.
So that's it, man. We're going global. Oh, we're already gone global. So what else can I say? What we're about. You asked me what we're about. We review spiritual teachers' videos, motivational speakers' videos, self-help expert videos, and yes, and maybe other gurus of other disciplines. Even next week's might be a comedian. The week after that could be a television evangelist, and it'll probably be a lot of people that we've never experienced any of their material before. But conversely, it'll also be favorites of ours, and hopefully soon enough we get enough feedback from our listeners that say, hey, have you ever listened to this person? Hey, this is my favorite teacher to listen to when I go for a long car ride. Great. So we need that. We welcome that.
Right.
And what else? What else do we do, Ray?
I mean, that's about it. We listen to it, we reviewed it, we examine a teaching, a video, and then we just we break it down. We give you what we like, what we don't like, our opinion on it, and stuff that we think is useful, that could be helpful. I like that. So we just keep it real for you guys.
Yeah. We're not monkeying around, but we might be monkeying around. And we keep it real. Then you're tasked when you're setting up all these sites with a little description. You have this many words, describe what you're doing. And I think what I've come to find with some of the words is that we're trying to do this all in a very respectful but comical way, but at the same time embracing that authenticity. So it's not a skit, it's not a plan. None of this is scripted. I think Ray has a few notes today. I have 0 notes. It's not edited. It's not abridged by any means. It's just we hit record. In fact, when we just started today, that's it. And whatever happens, happens. So I think that's going to be the fun part. Ray is like, hey, are you ready? And I'm like, no. I'm like, all right, I'm going to hit record. Go. So this week we decided to review Alan Watts's recording called "The Nature of God."
Yes, 5.4 million views on that.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, that's a lot of views. So,
and I will divulge this on my side of the fence over here. I don't know which way to point. I know you're that way. So
I'm everywhere.
Oh, so I have never witnessed a single voice recording, video, sighting, anything in my 46 years of Alan Watts. It's been suggested several times by several people. It's on my list of to-do things. Oh my gosh, my tsunami of stuff to get to eventually. But I never did. And so this is another thing about the podcast that really excites me, is that it gives me and maybe a lot of us an opportunity to experience something for the first time. I don't know what the man looks like. I may have seen a picture, but I've never been able to plug the two in. So before we dive into what we heard and talk about our feelings of it, and et cetera, it's like when you read a book and you create your own character. You know, the first time you read The Hobbit before The Lord of the Rings was released and all that.
You know what? I was like that for the longest time with Howard Stern.
Oh, really?
I used to listen to him in high school on the, before getting ready to school and stuff. And for years, I had no idea like how he looked, I know what you're saying, how you hear that voice and you build an image in your mind of how you think that person will look or should look. And,
wow. What would be really cool is if we can just like take Ray's image of what he thought Howard Stern looked like before he ever saw a picture and then like put it on the screen. That'd be some kick-ass technology.
That was when he had the long hair and everything and looked like Joey Ramone.
Oh my gosh. So when you saw Howard Stern for the first time, did it like totally like blow your mind? Like, whoa, or was it close? Yeah.
I don't know what image I really had. Yeah. I didn't really have an image, I guess, but it was just kind of weird hearing that. When you see the image finally and you hear the same voice coming out of it, it's like, whoa, But I've had the same experiences on Plenty of Fish and Tinder before too. Talk to a girl online, you're chatting, and maybe you see a couple pics from a weird angle.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that was the person I've been messaging for the past 10 days.
Yeah. Wow. And I guess that could go either way, right? Like fucking A, or like, oh boy.
Right. But for me, I've listened to Watts, plenty of times. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of Watts. I love that dude's voice, the way he talks, the way he articulates. I wish Alan Watts could read me a bedtime story. That'd be like the ultimate, just the way he talks and projects, and just that comforting voice, and just so smart. So, just a little bit about Alan Watts. He was born in 1915, died in 1973. He was actually a priest for 5 years, from 1945 to 1950. So he wrote over 25 books. So what he's kind of known for is he brought a lot of that Eastern mysticism from Buddhism, Zen, Taoism, brought it to the West. And I think that the fact that he was a priest, he was kind of able to just kind of speak to it, kind of break it down into the West in a way that they could understand it,
Wow. He left this earthen plane before I was even born. I was born in 1974.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and he was kind of controversial too, because he was known to be a very heavy drinker.
Whoa.
I think basically that's what kind of led to his early death. Which is kind of different from, you think like somebody who's in spirituality,
right,
to be a heavy drinker, and somebody who's Zen and Buddhism. So he was kind of controversial, some of the stuff he said. And he actually referred to himself as a spiritual entertainer. That's kind of what he said. I'm a spiritual entertainer. He just kind of explains what he knows and, breaks it down for people and, people in the West to understand it.
And there's another word we can add to our repertoire, because we started off the broadcast. I was talking about spiritual teachers, gurus, experts, etc., and now we have entertainers. So that's awesome. Dude, I didn't know. I tasked myself to not Google anything. All I was gonna do was listen to this video. I actually, when you sent it to me, I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch this video. I did not know I was not going to watch anything but this screen of this, space fantasy art image thing that, with the cobra or the snake in the background, and then holding, a galaxy in its hand or whatever. And it never transitioned to him talking on stage or anything like our last week's episode of Eckhart on stage. And I'm like,
Right.
all right, I'm here for the voice experience, which 100% agree with what you said. Man, I was so captivated by just the romance of his voice and imagining where he's from and what time he's from, not even knowing if he was still alive or not. Ray, I had no idea that he's long been passed. So that was interesting, and I really felt like I was listening to like an old radio show from from somewhere on the other side of the pond being broadcast, or like I was listening to an old record on one of those phonograph things with the horn things that come out or whatever, like it was so, I don't know, it just felt antique and just like you said, like have him read you a bedtime story would be dope. And so I fell instantly in love with that as an entertainer myself, right? But then I instantly shifted into, all right, this guy, and guys, we made a big leap here. We went from, we're going to talk about feelings and intuition to the nature of God. There's been no middle part of this sandwich, man. This has just been like, we went from 0 to 300 miles per hour in like 1 week. And maybe that's really slow if you put it in those terms. But you know what I mean? Like, it was fucking fast.
I mean, really, the nature of God, the way we look at it, this is probably that video is probably as deep as is, as in mysticism is what you get. This is as deep as you get. The God about, he explains God as a concept and then going beyond concept and recognizing God as, just kind of that emptiness, that void in which everything is contained.
Well, let me stop you. Let me stop you before you get too into it, because I had that surprise. I have a surprise for you. And then surprises. Yes, then we'll jump right back into that. Because I'm going to try to do something here, folks. I don't know if I can. Ray and I are very technically challenged, so I'm going to exit full screen. I'm going to play the very beginning of the recording, and hopefully it'll translate and you can hear it to what he says, and then Ray will jump right back into what you're talking about. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Here we go.
I can't hear that. I can't hear it on my side.
You can't hear that? You know what I just...
Not really.
No.
Not really.
Okay, you know why you can't hear it? Because I didn't take my earphones out.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, we're figuring this out, guys. This is part of the... Okay, I got it. Okay, I'm going to take my earbuds out. Now, you should be able to hear it now, right? Ready? In 3, 2, fun.
Was asked on his return whether he had been to heaven and seen God, and he said yes. And so they said to him, well, what about God? And he said, she is black.
All right, so that's the way this whole thing starts off. And Ray, were you able to hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay, cool, perfect. Let me switch back to our screen and stuff. And so this is my introduction. Ray sent, this is Ray's like, hey, let's watch it. I'm like, this is what he's sending me. I'm like, okay. And the audience is laughing, and I'm very resistant, I think, in general, to conversations about God because of my upbringing with organized religion and this and that, and the Catholic faith and otherwise. And I'm like, but hey, this is the podcast. I got to be open to this. And I'm okay that Ray has taken me from feelings and intuition to the nature of God. No, I'm not, but I'm listening. I listened to this thing 4 times. I spent 100 minutes listening to him. But before I get to that, back, and again, sorry for cutting you off, but I had to try to play that before we started because you were starting to dive into that very concept.
Right.
Take it over, brother.
Basically he's explaining God as, we give God a lot of concepts, like he says in the video, which I thought was really interesting when he talks about Jesus, how Jesus used the analogy of the Father And he even said in that, basically Jesus was kind of forced in that culture to use that analogy as something they could relate to. And I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting to how we use those analogies to describe something, but then it becomes, people take it so literal. Now it's like when passed down, it's like if you challenge that concept, in church, then it's like you're not a Christian then. So how do we know that maybe Jesus was forced to use that concept as the Father and to explain God? Maybe that's what he had to use. If he would have tried to use something out of Hinduism or another culture, maybe it wouldn't have worked. And now we're kind of stuck with with that analogy being the absolute truth, when it was just there to kind of show or kind of prove a point that we're all part of one thing. I don't know. But the way it starts out though with Kali is very interesting. Kali is the kind of the female equivalent of Shiva, the destroyer. So I mean, it's kind of interesting too in Hinduism how they have their own kind of trinity as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, a creator, the sustainer, and a destroyer, and everything follows that cycle. Everything arrives in creation. Everything kind of stays for some point. It has to kind of stay, and then Shiva is the destruction of that, and everything kind of comes in that circle. There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything. So, and that's kind of like how they describe the process of everything. So,
and you started off, and again, my fault for funking up your flow. I had to get that recording out there because that's how the experience began for me, and the gift that you presented to me. I'm like, okay, because Ray knows that I love funny and to be a funny guy, and it starts off on a comical note, but a very serious note too. It wasn't, I mean, this wasn't his words. This is a story long ago from what the astronauts brought back, and about the blackness of space, right? And
right.
she being receiving the feminine energy, and that's what you were initially talking about. So do you want to hit on that for a little while, like where he was taking us on this adventure of maybe just for the time? I liked his style about, he didn't condemn any religions or any, he just said it's very dangerous for us to commit to maybe this type of, he didn't say it's wrong or it's right or anything like that.
No.
He just said maybe think about it this way. And he never says that I'm right or this is the only way, which I definitely adored that element of his presentation. But he did say, be careful about the Santa Claus, picture, the old man with the beard image that we put on God.
Right.
And
right.
and let's think about the astronaut story and the origins of the universe and where we come from. And so, yeah, talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from space, space is actually, what is space? Space is the void of darkness, which everything comes out of. The earth, the planets, the stars, the moons, so I guess it's kind of relating it to a black female, is the, which, like I said before, it kind of brings an interesting, way of looking at, once you go black, you never go back. Look at it. So, I mean, looking as God as a black female is certainly a different viewpoint. I think a lot of times how we conceptualize God is based definitely upon our upbringing. But I think a lot of how we look at God is, for most people, is a projection of their own ego. We make God, they say, we're made in God's image, but I think a lot of us create God in our own image, in our own ego's image. Like a lot of us, we project God as a kingly, as a boss, because we're somebody powerful, like the most powerful image of our own ego. Like, if you don't believe in my God's gonna like condemn you or judge you or sentence you to damnation, or something. And, you know, I think a lot of that is ego. It's ego projection, because we want to feel good that there's somebody who's all powerful that we're aligned with. You know, if I say I'm a part of God, and my God is a big, kingly, all powerful guy who's going to like destroy anyone who disagrees with my opinion, you know, then, you know, that's power. That makes me feel good. But, you know, and I think that the more awakened we become, more we kind of see through that. I know certainly I have, you know, I was raised Catholic too. I don't really know if I ever really had an image of God back then, but, you know, it certainly has changed over time. So what would you say, how is your image of God, or your concept of God, how has it changed for you since you've been on this journey?
Man, I was thinking where what you were sharing was leading me, and just remembering my experience the 4 times listening to this. Where it hit home for me was that when at the end, when he's talking about how I forgot the term that he used, or the phrase that he said he's coined about atheism or whatever, but he was contending that his viewpoint wasn't atheistic without something attached to it, which in and of itself could be its own religion. And he was saying by giving up the physical attachment to the concepts of what we hold on so dearly to, that is a faith beyond faith.
Right.
And that's always been something that has profoundly resonated within me when parental, ancestral, societal pressures have been forcing their viewpoints and beliefs upon me. I'm like, nope, that doesn't feel right. Nope, that doesn't feel right. And there's all these different godheads and figures out there and all these different beliefs, and everyone thinks they're right. I'm like, is it possible, guys, that none of us are right? And there's something incomprehensible. And that's the beauty of this journey and experience, is that we cannot comprehend what is beyond the void. So
Right.
in the beginning, he takes us to space, and the audience laughs, and it makes you think about like the things that came up for you. But for me, it quickly took a turn to that divine masculine and divine feminine energy, and the receiving and and how they both work together, you know, the yin and the yang. And is God a male figure? Is God a female figure? Is God both? Right? Is it all God? But what's beyond the stars in space, like the reset, when he talks about death and how we all fear death, and then the pictures of death in certain religions, and how those don't seem very much enjoyable at all. And he giggles about that. The audience laughs about that, and how
About when he talks about heaven, saying how in the Christian religion, you know, heaven is sounds just as horrible as hell, you know, being trapped in church forever.
right. And he's like, that's terrifying for children. And I think for me, I've always had a disdain for overbearing authoritative figures, and that just comes from my upbringing, you know, with public schooling, and parents that, you know, maybe just did the best they could with what they knew, and the world around them, but really just rubbed me, forced to go to what was it called, CDC class or something, like, what was it called? I don't even remember. CDC.
Yeah, after school.
Yeah. And like, and those figures saying, this is it, you need to believe this. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I already get this at home.
Have you ever listened to the Bill Burr when he talks about religion? That skit he does?
No.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, listen to that. It's pretty interesting because first he talks about Scientology, And he talks about how ridiculous all that stuff in Scientology sounds. And he's like, you know, what's weird is like, that stuff sounds ridiculous. He's like, but I had to look at my own religion and it's just equally as ridiculous. And he's like, oh, how come I think that's, you know, that's right. You know, that's full of crap and mine is right. And he says, probably because I'm hearing about Scientology as an adult, where I heard about, you know, Christianity as a kid. And he's like, you know, back then I believed in Santa Claus. I believed in the Easter Bunny. So yeah, you know, it made sense that there would be, you know, some person walking on water and making fish multiply and stuff like that. And he says, yeah, you know, it was just, you know, I heard it at a young age, so it was believable.
Yeah, I would definitely. I've recently discovered Bill in my journey to funny and studying comedy and stand-up comedians and stuff, and he's one that made it on my Netflix list, and I was like, oh, this is what Bill's all about. But I haven't heard him talk on that subject yet, so that'd be interesting because he's fearless, man. He's definitely you know I don't have to tell you, but to I guess to circle back to end the answer to that question that you posed, what did it look like for me? I'm certain at some time or another it was that whole Santa Claus thing. I'm sure as I sat in church and listened to the hymns and sang the songs or whatever, I'm sure I constructed some type of Gandalf type, you know, imagery at one point or another. But that was just because I was listening to a tale. It was not something that I pulled into my heart. And so now when I think of it in the journey to where I sit today, I think it really looks and continues to feel like an openness. It to me, that's what makes it. It's not a person or, you know, a being or a light or a darkness. It's almost like an expansiveness, like a beautiful open prairie of sorts, just magical. It's not heaven. It's not a place. It's a feeling of it's all possible, and keep searching and keep that. I think that's
almost like an infinite, like infinite. You know, to me, I see the more as I've awakened, the more I've, you know, come through my realizations is, you know, I see God as pretty much everything. Everything is God in a way. The same way as when you have a dream, everything in that dream is a part of one consciousness.
Right.
But, you know, when we go into the dream, we kind of forget that we're dreaming. We believe that we're the character we are. We believe in the storyline that's going on in the dream, just like how we do, you know, like right now, you know, but everything is really one single consciousness playing itself out under the illusion that it's not.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of how I see it. You know, that we're all part of one thing experiencing itself through our individuality. So, I mean, that's, you know, and I believe, you know, we're all part of this one being, we're all part of the single consciousness. And, yeah, I mean, it's, I know in the Ramayana, there's a really good story. Ramayana is like a Hindu holy book. And it's about a story about Ram. Ram is God and his wife gets kidnapped. His wife Sita gets kidnapped by a demon. And Hanuman is this monkey who saves his wife. And he does this big epic adventure and he's talking to Ram and he makes this really good statement to Ram. Hey, there's the monkey right there, Hanuman. He talks to Ram and he says, Ram, he's like, when I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am, you and I are one and the same. So it's kind of a deep thing, you know, when you don't know who you are, we look at God as someone we serve, as someone outside ourselves. You know, we think about that, you know, we go through troubles, dramas of life, we don't really see ourselves as part of God anymore. We see ourselves, we get kind of swept away in these dramas and stuff going on, and we forget about our true nature. We forget about our divinity or oneness. And, you know, when he says that, you know, when I remember who I am, you and I are one and the same. You know, and like Ram, you know, it was just like a mirror to his soul that he was able to see that he was part of that. So
yeah, I think, what you explained really definitely is a perfect reflection of what I was trying to illustrate with the open field, that meadow, that prairie of just everything and openness. Is that
Yeah.
I think that, when you start um, articulating how you see and feel God in everything, that's what that is. That's like I want to hear. That's what I also love about this podcast is that you and I are going to expose each other and our listeners to things that they've never considered before. And that's been really the mission of my life, is to hear everyone's story. I'm not anti-religion. I just don't, I don't go around going, I don't like this group, I don't like that group, your story
Right.
sucks, that's ridiculous. I want to hear what you believe. I want to bring it into my being and make it a part of this beautiful experience in this world, because there's truth in everyone's beliefs, and
Right.
their
Right.
everyone's perception is their reality and stuff. So for me, it's never been about condemnation or finding the ultimate answer. For me, it's been collecting stories and
Mm.
and experiences from people that say they have talked to God. And
Right.
one of those times it was at a drum circle. This guy's like, hey, sometimes you show up and the night's pretty cool. And he's like, other times, we're sitting in a circle and we're talking to God. And he actually, his poetry was much more smooth than the way I shared. But the way he said it, I was like, man, this is serious. Like, what we're doing here in community in this circle, and the portals that we're opening and the connections we're making together, and where this whole thing can take us if we surrender to it and let go, and this one beat and becoming one rhythm, like, all right, and whatever else he meant by it. But it was beautiful. He said it so casually, like,
Right.
yeah, tonight might be, welcome to the drum circle. Tonight might be just chill, or it might be one of those nights where we end up talking to God. And I was like, what? Like, that hit me right now. I was like, okay. So yeah, I just, in lieu of everything, I'll just touch upon this really quickly, because I don't want to dismiss what's happening in the world around us right now. And this podcast is not about that. But in lieu of the fact that we've started the podcast and we are talking very, 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 please understand, respectively, about how Alan Watts talks about, before I was born and this recording was released, how the astronaut, that story came to him about how the space is God, and how when asked, they said, the astronaut goes, so what did you see of God, or what do you bring back as far as your perception of God is concerned? And she is black, and that's what the astronaut said. So it is of the utmost respect and understanding that we're not making light or fun of anything that's going on right now, and just I felt a heaviness in my heart to share that as we're talking about this and stuff, and just to make a point of that. We decided on this video before all the things that are happening around us, and it was I almost wanted to call Ray and say, hey, this, we're talking about God and God being feminine energy and God being black. Do we want to shelf this topic for a while and stuff, because we don't want to offend anyone? But it's not coming from a place of offense. We're not talking about any type of particular people from anywhere. We're talking about space and the receptive energy and the beautiful blackness of God and the feminine energy. And so I just wanted to make the point to say that, because Ray, I really almost called you and said, let's postpone this and talk about something else. But I'm like, no.
Kali's a very important deity in Hinduism, and like you said, she's a destructive aspect of feminine energy. And I think a lot of times people get confused by that. And I know in tradition stuff, people have made Kali into something bad, something evil. But really what that destruction is really our own ego, really our own illusions. That's what she destroys. That's what Shiva is destroying, is that part of us that is lost, that part of us that kind of lost that connection, that obstacle that's preventing us from realizing our divinity, our oneness, that's what's being destroyed. That's what she destroys. That's what Shiva destroys. You know, it has nothing to do with destroying property or just, you know, going out and just slaughtering people. It's destroying the illusion of our separateness. So that is what Kali destroys. It's not anything other than that.
Thank you for bringing that to the table, man, because when I listened to it, guilty as charged, man. I had no experience or have spent any time really investigating the depths of those beliefs and scriptures and stuff like that at all. It's just, not that I haven't wanted to, but I haven't had any intimate friends that ever shared their knowledge with me, nor have I had the time and that endless stacking of things to get to. So it was neat to be introduced to that in that 25-minute recording by Mr. Watts, but it's also nice to hear your take on it, because that brings new light and understanding for sure.
Right. So, and then, you know, it's kind of cool, like how Watts says, you know, explains kind of duality in a sense, you know, the masculine and feminine principles, and how he was describing, you know, the feminine is sort of the space, the container, or you could say the paper that the, you know, the printed words are on, that you need one without the other, and that they're both, you have to have one to have that, you know, to be complete.
Yeah, he
without
said
it.
Yeah, he said something can't be outstanding until you have instanding.
Right,
The
yeah.
contrast and the foundations of our world are built upon that the feminine energy.
Right, and a lot of people they say that's why we have actually incarnated to begin with, was to learn through that duality, to learn through both sides of, you know, light and dark, shadows, and you know, come in here. This is the world of duality, and that's how we learn. You know, we learn through that you know, suffering and resistance and all that other stuff.
I would say if anyone struggles with anxiety around, you know, death and stuff, in this 25 minutes, he touches on everything that we talked about, but he also briefly talks about death and the fear of it. And I'll tell you, it's definitely calming. Again, his demeanor, his flow and his voice, everything aids to that soothing sea that he rocks you in, right? And I love phrases, man. I mean, I'm a sucker for phrases like ghost of a notion. You know, when you start saying stuff like that, you tickle my fancy in all the right ways, man. I'm like, and that's why I listen to it usually for a podcast or, you know, an assignment similar to this. I'll listen to something once and then I'll just shoot from the heart and go. I got a pretty good, you know, memory to where once is enough. But something kept pulling me back. And it wasn't because I wanted to be super prepared for this episode or anything. I was just like, there was something there. And I would say I definitely have struggled with, you know, the fear of death in the past, more so in the past than the present. But it was definitely, it had me breathing in a new just level of relaxation when I considered that possibility, and how he's like, we've died before, you know, and he doesn't talk about reincarnation is a thing everyone needs to believe in. He's not like impressing his agenda upon anybody. He's just like, he just says it nonchalantly, like, we've died before. If we haven't, then we wouldn't understand what this life is, because we wouldn't have that contrast. And so he's just like, just understand. We've been there before. You're going to be there again.
Just relax.
Yeah.
You've died many times before. You'll die again.
Yeah.
Nothing new.
Yeah. And he's like, believe in stuff, don't believe in stuff. Be cautious, don't be cautious. And he's almost talking about nothing, but I think in that he's talking about the greatest and the biggest something. Because at first I dismissed it. Like the first time around, I was like, all right, whatever. I've heard stuff like this before. And then I was like, wait, am I missing something? And then I went back the second time and I'm like, okay, maybe I've heard this stuff before. Third time, it was the charm, man. It was truly, and I mean, I'm obsessed with the Power of Three. I've shared this with you before, but the third time for me was certainly the charm. I was like, oh, I get it. I'm like, this is my brother from another mother. He's saying everything that I really have always felt and believed, but maybe didn't have the courage to express, or felt like I had the permission to be able to without repercussion, stand on the rooftops and proclaim. And Alan's like, yeah, dude, I mean, known this since before you were born, bruh. And I'm like, thanks for the gentle reminder from beyond the grave, Mr. Watts, brought to you by my friend Ray.
Well, that's kind of interesting. You said that reminds you, and really that's a lot of what spiritual teachers do. They don't really teach you anything new. That they just help you remember what you've forgotten. You know,
Yeah.
'cause a lot of that stuff is really it's all in here. We know it all already. We just forgotten it. So a lot of those spiritual teachers are just reminding us that, you know, sometimes they could just say it better than we do.
He really
words.
he really, through the power of you, I thank you both for walking me back to the door and just kind of letting the breeze gently blow it open and say, hey, John, this is here for you to consider. And like you just said, the both of you are teachers, because you were called to bring this video to my attention and now to our listeners' attention. And I'm really interested to hear, you know, we're still in the infancy of this and we're not bingeable yet, but in a few weeks we will definitely be up to 8 or 10 episodes. So you can binge the hell out of the Bodhi Bros. However, really, really stoked about hearing what people feel about, you know, the Eckhart video, this video now, and so we can get the conversations going and stuff respectfully.
Yeah,
please.
I'd like to hear you know, people's opinions about, you know, Alan Watts, what they think of him and everything else. And you know, right now we're going to do a lot of different teachers, a lot of variety, but it doesn't mean we won't come back. We you know, we can come back to Alan Watts and still do another, you know, a video by him some other time. You know, just because we've done a teacher before doesn't mean we're done. You know, he has a whole expansive library of, you know, the guy wrote over 25 books. I'm sure there's always something that we could pick from to listen to. So, you know, we'll definitely, Watts is somebody definitely want to come back to, for me at least.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking that this morning when I was listening to it for the fourth time, because you know, on YouTube it'll pull up recommendations, and I'm like, I'm definitely gonna listen to that. Totally curious now. And that doesn't happen that didn't happen with Eckhart for me. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to listen to Eckhart again. No offense, bro. No offense, brother. But like, I just, again, enjoyed last week.
Like I said, Eckhart was like listening to Bob Dylan, you know, great words, but just can't really get into the act of it, where like Alan Watts, to me, that guy's like, you know, that guy's like Rolling Stones.
Right. I'm ready to listen to the next Stones album. And for me, that really, because there's so much I have to get to, it is exceptionally rare that I'm ready to dive in and do the Alan Watts thing again. I might even do it today, just because I want to see if this was just not a farce by any means, but like, all right, let me hear him one more time.
He has another really good video. It's like a really short one. You could find on YouTube. I forget the exact name of it, but he says basically like life is not a journey.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting, because you're like, whoa, don't you hear about the spiritual journey? And you know, life's a journey, right?
Right.
And he's like, no, it's a dance. There's not some finishing point. And he says basically life is a dance. You're not meant to get from one, because it's like at a dance, you're not meant to get from one point in the room to another. There's no point in the finish. The whole thing is the whole thing is a dance. The whole thing is a song, and it's a really good video. I recommend that one to listen to, for you or for anyone listening to this. You know, it really kind of changed my mind about how we look at things. You know, we're always looking for a finish line, you know, and sometimes we have our horse blinders on and we're just going forward towards our goal, which is fine, but we're not enjoying life. We're not, you know, life is to be enjoyed. It's a dance. It's a song, you know?
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. And I'm so glad that the broadcast brought us to this point, because it's one of my most favorite things on the planet to do is dance. But you're okay. Talk about gently having the door blow open and say, "Here, John, here's something else for you to consider." I'm on what you're very aware of, the journey to funny right now. I call my comedy channel, for those of you that are out there that don't know yet, practicing to be to allow more of the comedian in me to come out and pursue that as a career, a long abandoned passion. I'm coming back to it. So my YouTube comedy channel is pretty much the episodes are called The Journey to Funny. And people were like, well, you're already funny. It's not you're already there. And I explain why I call it a journey to funny, because there's steps, and I can get more funny and I can feel more funny and all this stuff. But I almost am really, really enamored by maybe one day transitioning into the dance to funny, especially if I watch the video, man, and I can get Alan's permission, from the great beyond. And, for all I know, you could be Alan reincarnated, man. And you're with me right now. So
Maybe.
Shit, that's really perfect timing, man. I was going to watch one of the things in the median there, on the side of the YouTube road, but I think now I'm definitely going to pull that one up. And what I can do is, if I find it, or if you can send it to me or whatever, I'll include that in the description below. So
okay.
Yeah, when we publish this thing, are we going to publish this one? Is this one publishable? Can we do that? Should we listen to it first? I mean, is it
I don't like listening to myself. I know that. I don't know.
Is it
maybe that's something I got to work on.
Is this one too sensitive or too controversial? Controversial? Is it? Can we publish this one? Can we do it?
I mean, aren't we supposed to just be real, and it just comes out? Hey, it comes out. What's?
I knew the answer I was going to get, man. I'm just setting it up for you to go publish the damn thing.
Yeah, we got to put it out there, man.
This is part of it, guys. This is part of the dance, if you will. This is I will admit there are certain topics that I don't really feel comfortable talking about and just putting myself out there. And then, because the way online, offline, and all the lines work, there are some mean people out there, and some call them trolls, some call them whatever. Don't be one of those people. We'll delete you. We'll block you. We'll ignore you. Just don't do it, because it won't, it's not really going to accomplish anything. However, we are very wide open to hear your thoughts and your insights, your ideas for future listens, your idea for future considerations for us to throw into a podcast. But I got to tell you, this one, when you sent it, I'm like, no, I've already said this. No, and I'm still doing it right now. Even when we hit certain parts that we start talking about during this, I'm like, should we go there? Should we go there? Yes, the answer is yes. We need to explore it. We need to not be uncomfortable talking about this stuff, right?
We can't let fear get in the way. We can't let fear stop us. That's why I got the singing bowl right here.
I need it, Ray, because my life has been inundated with fear. My life has been fucking guided by fear, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. It's another reason why I'm doing this podcast, is to continue to allow myself to release that, and to connect with other beautiful, brilliant beings like yourself, like our listeners, and to share in this experience, and to really celebrate this dance and drum and sing together about the things that are hard to talk about the things that are easy to talk about the things that are funny to talk about, all the things without any prejudice whatsoever, and without any fear, recoiling, right. Like, oh, we're just, and I've done that during this recording, man, because it's just, I want that one love. I want that just seeing each other and seeing the world, yes, without labels.
Yeah.
And that's why when I travel, I'm glad that we're coming back to this, aspect of it. I don't like guidebooks. I don't like learning the history of a place like I didn't with Alan Watts. I didn't want to look anything up. I wanted to be surprised. I want the locals to guide me and say, hey, you should go to this beach. I don't want the tourist book. I want the experience of the people that live there. I want the poetry of the land and the culture. I want that to sing to me. You want it
to be authentic.
Yes, and I want the planet beneath my feet, the pulse, the heartbeat of the earth to pull me in the ways that my experience is best going to suit what's going to fill me up. And with people and labels, and we'll take Alan Watts for instance. Like I said, I didn't know when he was born. I don't know where he was born. And I didn't want to, because I didn't want to bring anything to the experience but what this beautiful man had to say about this very difficult to talk about subject.
Right. You wanted to be a raw reaction and with no assumptions or pre-assumptions, or what do you call it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and some might call that ignorance, but
No.
I look at it differently. I look at it as
I think it's cool because I've listened to quite a few Alan Watts talks before. I don't think I've ever listened to this one though before we did the episode, but it's kind of cool, that you never listened to him before. So it's it's kind of cool seeing your reaction, what you thought of him, what you think of what he had to say, how he talked and everything. To me it's you broke your Alan Watts virginity,
Oh, I totally did, man. And I started to practice in the car. I wanted to like surprise you with like an impersonation, because sometimes I do impersonations, but I can't do it justice yet, man. I can't. I was gonna start trying to talk like him.
Maybe down the road. Maybe a later episode.
I'll bring it back. But just in as he pauses, and I won't try to do his voice, but I really just loved how he was like, just imagine, Ray, pigs with wings flying around the streets of Chicago. Wouldn't that be a hoot? And he laughs at, I love that he giggles at his own little, his own little jokes and stuff. But it sounded so much better in my head. And that's why I wasn't going to try and knock you off your seat with the Alan Watts version, because I think I could do the accent. I could surely do the accent, but just to pay respect to him and the moment and everything that's going on in the world or whatever. I'm not going to try to pretend to be anyone I'm not today. Showing up raw and authentic and scared and vulnerable and fun and ready to dance, man. So what?
Dance.
Yeah. What? Do we miss anything? Is there anything that you feel like we?
It's tough because it's like you said, he says a lot in that video. And I noticed I listened to it 3 times, and I know every time I listened to it, I picked up something else. Like the first time I had to listen to it, I'm like, okay, kind of had to marinate a little bit, like, okay, okay, I think I get what he's saying. Second time, like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I understand what he's talking about, the duality and everything else, and the form and the formless, kind of describing the form and the formlessness, how they need each other in a way. And yeah, and then the third time I listened to it today, and it was like, wow, like, yeah, I kind of, you pick up more about it, how, like how he said, how we try to use analogies, we try to use concept to have an idea of God. And like you said, we have all these different concepts, and we get attached to these concepts. And and he's saying, it's okay, whatever concept you have, it's okay. It's just know that it's a concept that you're using,
Yeah, it was certainly poetry, man. Like you read a poem the first time and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. Then you read it the second, the third, and you're like, oh shit, I'm getting it. Like a song or really anything, but I would say he's definitely a prophetic poet for sure. In the 100 minutes I've spent with Mr. Watts now, grateful for his his drunken existence. I wonder what his poison of choice was, man. Because I drank for 20 straight years, folks, from age 15 to 35, man. I would say I averaged a half a bottle of whiskey a day. There's a lot of liquor, man. So I can understand why he danced the way he danced, with the way the world was happening around him and whatever he was presented with internally as well. The struggle is very real for all of us. All of our pains are very valid. All of our pains are very, very painful. Each and every one of us has our own suffering that's not less or more than the other. And to be with each other in those pains is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to ourselves and each other, is being present in that pain with our partners first and foremost, you know, in our love relationships, whether it's, you know, your wife, your girlfriend, fiance, boyfriend, whatever, and then into your friendships, and when you can, and heal those wounds from your childhood traumas and stuff as best as possible. Maybe even you start having those type of relationships with your mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers, to where you can see their pain and where they came from and how real their wounds are as well. Maybe my mom and dad really weren't out to hurt me, but they didn't know any better. And maybe one day I can get to a point where I can really feel, genuinely feel.
Sometimes we forget that those other people that hurt us were actually hurting themselves at that time, and they were dealing with their own suffering, and you know, they didn't have the right tools to deal with it, and unfortunately, you know, it came upon us, and you know.
Damn. Look how this one video brought us to so many different avenues to explore. Woo! Shit. Well, let's we're at a good time here. Let's talk real quickly. We usually do this off camera, but screw it. What do we have a sneak preview for next week? Like, what are we thinking of doing?
What I was thinking of maybe is setting up a poll for our fans. I was thinking maybe we could do Teal Swan versus JP Sears.
Versus.
Have them pick.
It's a battle.
It's a battle.
Yes. The spiritual.
That would be an interesting battle, actually. But
spiritual catalyst versus the woke AF comedian.
I picture like Teal like shooting this like energy out.
Right. Fucking lightning bolts coming out of JP's eyes or some shit. That's awesome. All right, you put that together, because I can't make that.
So I think maybe we could try to set up a poll.
Yeah.
And see what our viewers want us to see.
Yeah, man. Can we put that on the Facebook page then? So
we could do a Facebook. I think we could do a Facebook poll.
All right.
I think you could do. I think that's an option.
We'll do it on the Bodhi Bros. So if you haven't liked that yet, hop over there and like that page. The poll will be there. Then we could share it personally too if we want on our regular pages, just to see. So we could have
even if you want to comment on this video and put who you know.
Sure. Well, yes.
Or even recommend if you have a specific video too that you have in mind of either one of them, like, hey, I want you to look at this one, So
yeah, man, that's going to be hard to choose if we don't get a specific one from a fan to consider, whatever. There's so, oh my gosh, man. I mean, just because of the personal experience that you and I have with Teal and even JP, like it'd be hard to pick one. But it's so neat because we can always circle back and do another one. I'm sure this isn't the last Alan Watts video we'll review.
Heck no.
Yeah, it might be the last Eckhart video. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure. So, because someone might comment on that, the episode 1 and say, "This is my favorite Eckhart video. Will you guys consider doing this or check this out?" And either you or myself might take the dive into that and go, "Dude, we should totally do this one. It's awesome." So that's the beauty of this.
Just need some drink some Monster beforehand.
Oh yeah, man. Bring the claws out. Get up so we can get down. Speaking of which, it has been an absolute pleasure, Ray. Let me say, I'm glad we
Yes.
decided to do this thing together. And I'm going to spend the rest of the day downloading this thing and sharing it and making sure it's on all the platforms. So that'll be fun. Ray, maybe you can put the poll together.
Okay.
If you feel like that's good, we can get that out there, get that going. And it'll be on Instagram and the IGTV. It will be on all the platforms I previously mentioned, streaming for free. So if you can't do YouTube, I think watching it's awesome. It's fun because you can see our expressions, you can see our blunders, and trying to figure out this whole thing in the infancy of this podcast series called the Bodhi Bros. And it's on the Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public. Those are the ones. So if that's your thing, because maybe the data is too much when you're on your phone, out and about, walking, running, exercising, or you don't have Wi-Fi at home. I think it works that way. I've just been told sometimes when you do a podcast just on YouTube, you don't get a lot of listeners because it's just too much of a data drain on their plans and their phones, their devices. So we wanted to make it available everywhere. It'll be available on our Facebook page. I even think there'll be we have a Twitter. We have 0 followers there, but I don't tweet. I don't Twitter, not yet at least. But there is a
Twitter. No.
There is a Ray. I downloaded everything we've done so far in the Bodhi Bros is available on Twitter, so it's out there. So thank you so much for your patience, your patronage, your interest in watching this thing unfold. And it's just going to get better and better and bigger and bigger. And we're going to have more and more fun with it and connect with you all as intimately as we can. So, Ray, take us away, man. Final thoughts.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I think we learned a lot more than we thought we would from this video. Kind of went a lot of different areas, which was good. Covered a lot of ground. So, all right, well, I'll put that poll up, work on that. So you guys let us know who you want us to see, Teal or JP Sears. So that's all I got to say.
All right, guys, be kind to each other, love one another, and all that good stuff. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. I'm ending this recording in 3, 2, 4.